Good morning. Thank you for joining us for week 4 of distance learning. As you know, we've been working from module 9 of our HMH literature, and this is our second week looking at how food goes from the farm to our table. The essential question we're answering is, how does food get to your table? And our learning mindset is planning ahead. First, we're going to review some vocabulary. Then we're going to look at the vocabulary strategy, context clues. Our vocabulary this week will be rotation, storage, prepping, vine, and shrivel. Rotation means the action of rotating around an axis or a center, like the Earth rotates around its axis. Storage is a space available for storing something, in particular, allocated space in a warehouse. When you drive around Houston, you can see lots of places that sell storage spaces like this one to store your extra things. Prepping is to make ready. When I chop the vegetables, the garlic, the onions, gather my spices and other ingredients, I'm prepping materials to prepare a meal. Vine, a climbing or trailing woody stem plant of the grape family. So this is a picture of a grapevine. Shrivel, wrinkle and contract or cause to wrinkle and contract, especially due to loss of moisture. Here we see a leaf that has shriveled. One of the tasks I'm going to ask you to do to prepare for our Zoom meeting is to look at these examples and see if you can complete the sentences. If you wear 2 shirts in rotation, you wear blank. When you are prepping something, you are blank. When things are in storage, they are blank. Tomorrow, during our Zoom meeting, I will be asking you again these sentences, and I hope that you'll be able to complete them. Vocabulary strategy, context clues. Boys and girls, remember, we have used context clues all year, and we have learned that sometimes in a sentence, when there's a comma, it's followed by a definition of the word that we're wondering about. Other times, the examples later in a sentence or in sentences that follow help us infer or determine what the word means. If a sentence says not or, they might be indicating an antonym for the word that we're considering. But if a sentence says and or is, it might be giving us a synonym. So remember, context clues are words that help you understand the meaning of an unfamiliar word. The context clues can give you the definition or an example. And they don't always exactly tell you that they're giving you the definition or an example. You might have to make an inference or a smart guess. So let's look at some examples. How many types of marsupials live in Australia? I'm thinking marsupials is not a word I know. So if I continue reading my sentence, both kangaroos and wallabies carry their babies in their pouch. But I'm sure there are other marsupials too. When I read the sentence, I can see that it says kangaroos and wallabies are examples of marsupials, and I can see that those animals are animals that carry their babies in their pouch. When I think about kangaroos, I know they're not animals that lay eggs. They actually have babies. So I can infer that marsupials are mammals that have pouches on their bodies to carry their babies in. Let's look at the second example. We had an intergenerational party last week. The house was crowded. My sisters and I were there, plus my older sister's kids, plus our parents, plus our parents' parents. If I look at the word intergenerational, I recognize the prefix inter and the suffix al. I think this is describing what kind of party they had. And I notice it says the house was crowded, so there were a lot of people. And it lists different members of the family that were there. So intergenerational must mean that they had a party with all kinds of family. The kids, the parents, the grandparents, the cousins, the aunts, and the uncles. Let's look at our last example. Some people have acrophobia. For example, if they stand at the top of a mountain, their palms sweat and their hearts race, even if they're safely inside a mountain hut. So it sounds like acrophobia is a kind of fear. And when I have this fear, I might experience my palms sweating and my heart racing. And it sounds like it has to do with being in a high place. So acrophobia may mean a fear of being in a high place. So as you saw, context clues can be in the same sentence or in those sentences around the word. One of the other things I would like you to do to prepare for our Zoom meeting tomorrow is to find the context clues that explain what evaporate means, and then write some sentences that include context that help us know what evaporate means. So let's look at the part of the text that uses evaporate. Raisins do not look like grapes. They're withered up and wrinkled. Are they soaked inside a bathtub until their skin is crinkled? As grapes bake in the hot sun, their water evaporates. The more water they lose, the more grapes shrivel, causing wrinkles. And remember, shrivel means that things dry out and get smaller and wrinkled. So I'm going to look at the word evaporates and the sentences that come after. I see words like lose water, shrivel, and wrinkles. These are going to be clues that help me understand what evaporate means. To prepare for tomorrow, think of some sentences that include context and help us know what evaporate means. And I'll ask you to tell us those tomorrow. You can write them on a scrap of paper or you can write them in your notebook. Thank you. Let's look at our reading. Today we're going to focus on text and graphic features. So our story is going to be How Do You Raise a Raisin by Pam Munoz Ryan. She is one of my favorite authors and has written books like Writing Freedom and Esperanza Rising. Remember to consider, is the text fiction or nonfiction? What is the genre and what is the author's purpose? In order to prepare for this book, I'd like you to watch this short video that tells you about reading informational text. And we're going to see that this is both an informational text and it has poetry. Informational text gives facts and examples about a topic. The ideas are organized by central ideas supported by key details, and they include words that are specific to the topic. Poetry uses sounds and rhythm to show images and express feelings. The lines are like sentences in a poem, and stanzas are like the paragraphs. They follow a clear rhyming pattern some of the times. The speaker in a poem reflects on a particular topic. Also, when you finish listening to this video, you can go back and watch this short video on poetry. Elements of poetry. Poetry can use free verse, rhyme, similes, metaphors, or sensory language. Free verse is poetry that ends in lines that do not rhyme. For example, my fluffy white cat blows into the room like a cloud. I don't hear any words that rhyme in that free verse. Rhyme is when two or more words sound the same. They're usually found at the end of the lines in the poem, but not always. For example, funny bunny. A simile is when I compare two things and use the word like or as. For example, a light as bright as the sun. A metaphor is when I compare two things but do not use like or as. My home is my castle. And sensory language are words that connect with our senses. Purple lavender smells sweet. So as you read How Do You Raise a Raisin by Pam Munoz-Ryan, consider, why might an author choose to include poetry in an informational text? This is one of the questions you'll find on the discussion board. I also want you to think about why the author used the word raise instead of grow or produce. When I read stanza 1, you will hear that the author says raise. What are the two main fonts or typefaces found on this page and throughout the text? And what is the purpose of using two fonts or typefaces? Let's begin reading. How do you raise a raisin? Tell me so I'll know. They're such peculiar little things. How do they sprout and grow? Do raisins grow on Earth or other planets far away? Do aliens collect them and space shuttle them our way? Raisins are dried grapes. So far, there is no proof that raisins grow on other planets. Raisins are grown on Earth in countries like Turkey, Iran, Greece, Australia, and the United States. So as you can see, there are words in paragraph or stanza 1 that are darker, a little bigger, and the font or typeface is different than paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 has a different type or font. The letters are a little smaller and they're not in bold. I wonder why the author did that. Well, when I think about the style of paragraph 1, I notice know and grow rhyme and away and way rhyme. I also notice that they talk about raisins growing on Earth, or do they grow on other planets? And they question, do aliens collect raisins and bring them in a space shuttle? This is an image, this language creates an image in my mind of aliens bringing raisins to Earth. And I also notice there are 4 questions in this paragraph or stanza. I notice the language is kind of musical. So I think stanza 1 is the poetry, and stanza 2 is more informational. It answers the questions in stanza or paragraph 1. It sounds more like when I talk. It doesn't have the rhymes and the musical quality that paragraph 1 has. So I think the author begins with a question in poetic form, and then the informational text answers the question. Let's see what paragraph or stanza 3 and 4 say. So who discovered raisins? Were they here when Earth began? Who was the first to nibble them, dinosaur or man? Again, we have questions, began and man rhyme. And let's see if paragraph 4 answers the questions about where raisins come from. Raisins were probably discovered when someone or something tasted grapes that had dried on the vine. Over the years, people and animals figured out which grapes produced the sweeter, yummiest raisins. So again, this is more like spoken language. I did not see any words that rhyme. And I did notice our vocabulary word vine was used in this paragraph. And we have a reminder in the box at the bottom that vine means a plant that grows along the ground or up around something. Do raisins grow in one place, like Raisin Creek or Raisin Hill? Is there a special town called Raisin Field or Raisinville? So hill and ville rhyme.